Welcome back to Auto Off Topic. What's up, Brad?
A whole lot, Andrew. What's going on with you?
Yeah, I hear car show season is back.
All over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Of the country, I guess we should say, because we didn't leave the country.
I guess I'll let you start because you get a bunch of stuff, right?
Do we want to start right in the show, or do we want to start on the leading up to the show?
You can start wherever you want to start.
All right, well, let's start leading up to the
Oh,
show.
yeah, because you did finish the Springs. I want to hear about the Springs.
Yeah, so where did I leave off on that?
I think we were waiting for them to get to you.
Okay, well, they're here.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. The Springs finally arrive. Start this whole thing over, Andrew. That was terrible. The Springs finally arrived.
Yep.
Wednesday of last week.
Yeah, because I sent the fronts via FedEx and the rears via USPS, and USPS just
lost the race.
Them.
Yeah, they didn't know.
Won. FedEx totally lost.
Oh yeah. No, FedEx lost the race. Yeah, FedEx didn't know they were racing. I don't think is the problem.
Yeah.
It cost more to ship them from FedEx, and it took a week longer.
It was less.
Oh, it cost less to ship them.
Yeah, because I couldn't fit them in a flat rate box.
Right. So it cost less to ship them USPS.
It would have cost more. That's why I went with FedEx.
Okay, so I was saying, less. I apologize. I was saying that the shipping for the FedEx parts actually cost more than the shipping for the USPS parts.
Oh,
but that's because the parts that you shipped FedEx didn't fit in the USPS box.
Right. That's correct.
I got you. Okay, excellent. So it cost less than the USPS if you're not going flat rate. So I guess they have a little bit of an excuse there as to why it took longer. But it did take longer for them to get here than it should take to drive across the country. And they didn't drive them across the country.
Yeah, I don't know if because they're a flat rate and they are not batteries, they put them on a plane. I don't know.
They put them on multiple planes. They were in very many different locations throughout the course of the week and tracking in a flight pattern that made absolutely zero sense. But anyway, they're here now. They were here by Wednesday. I was planning on leaving on Thursday night.
Actually, so that you got them Friday night.
Oh, that's right too. Sorry, I got them Friday. Man, I'm all screwed up.
Yeah.
The Wednesday before is when the other parts got here. Friday night is when I got those parts. So Friday night, 2 Fridays ago. Right?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. So I technically had a week to install them in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to blame FedEx for my last minute antics, but I guess I can't. I guess I can only blame myself. So I was going to pre-build all 4 struts to put them in the car so that I could just jack the car up and swap them in the driveway without having to take them apart and then rebuild each one at each corner because that's annoying.
Yep.
So I did that. I built the fronts. I built the rears. The order of parts going in them was a little confusing on both fronts and rears because I didn't have other ones to go by. I was kind of eyeballing the parts that were there and assembling them where I thought they should fit. So the fronts went together pretty much no problem. The rears went together also pretty much no problem. Asterisk, come back to that later. So I did not put them together over the weekend. I didn't start assembling them until Monday the holiday. So Monday the 5th, I think, July 5th. So I assembled them Monday, July 5th, the rears on Tuesday, and then went to put them in the car starting Wednesday. I was going to put them in the car to leave for San Francisco, which for the geography challenged is about a 12-hour drive from Phoenix. So it's not close. So it's probably not wise to do all of this 2 days before leaving, but it is what it is. That's where we're at. It's a busy weekend. We weren't around very much, so I had to do what I could do it. So went out the driveway, started tearing the car apart. I have all the struts already pre-built. Get the front up in the air. The first strut took me maybe an hour because I was kind of learning where everything was in the car and what did what and where and how. So no real challenges, went together pretty well. Second strut took maybe 25 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. It didn't take much time at all. Once you know exactly how it goes together, it's a real easy job. You don't even need to pull the ball joint or take the brakes off. You just literally unbolt the 2 bolts on the strut and 3 bolts on the strut tower, and a couple of bolts holding brake lines and ABS sensors.
You didn't do that the
So
first time, did you?
didn't do what?
Try to take the ball joint off or anything?
Oh no. No, I'm just saying how easy it really is. I'm
Oh
just
yeah,
saying it was no. I didn't go that crazy. I looked at it and said, well, it looks pretty simple. As long as this control arm will swing down far enough, I shouldn't have to like pull a ball joint or anything. Should be pretty easy to do. So anyway, I get that side all taken care of. Get the second side all taken care of. The only issue I ran into in the front is you had sent me a set of camber bolts.
yeah.
And one of them came pre-stripped.
Really?
So yeah, the nut itself is pre-stripped. So both bolts are fine, but the threads inside the nut are just trashed. And obviously they were a different size nut than anything else I had on hand, and it was nighttime.
Oh, they were. I think they were locking nuts.
No, it's 100% stripped. It's not
Weird.
a locking nut issue. There, half of the threads are missing inside the nut.
Weird.
I couldn't even get it hand started onto the.
It must have stripped when I took them off.
Oh, had you used them before?
Yeah, I had them in the talon.
Okay. I didn't know if they were new or
I
not.
would never use them again because the coilovers have camber plates, so I didn't need them.
Right. So I will put them back in because I still asterisk. I'll get back to that part of the story too. So I will put them in. I just need to get a nut that actually fits the bolt. So
well, lucky for you, I've got another set coming out of the Gallant. I'm pretty sure I have a set in there because I'm waiting on the coilovers. But
perfect.
If I do have a set in there, I'll send those to you.
So anyway, it's got stock camber bolts in it, stock mount bolts in it now anyway, which is fine. I mean, it's not. I wasn't going racing. It was no big deal to have camber bolts in there for this trip. Fast forward to the back of the car. The passenger's side on a front wheel drive DSM is very difficult to do. It's much like the front. There's actually less bolts holding it together. There's 2 on the strut tower on the top, and there's 1 in the bottom, a la a standard style shock absorber. The problem is and you're gonna yell at me, Andrew, if I get the name of the part wrong. The bar that connects the rear axle, like beam axle, to the body, like a
panhard rod.
A panhard rod's what you'd call it on a
track bar.
On a track bar. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. A track bar. The bolt for that and the exhaust, the mount for that on the body and the exhaust, both are in the way of the inside bolt on the rear strut. So it involved maybe 2.5 feet of extensions and an impact socket to get it off and get it on, because there was no way to get anything in there and have any kind of swing to it unless you had like the world's longest extension and had 2 people to get it off of there, because I was going to just put the wrench on the outside of it and then rest it up against something and use the impact and just hope for the best. But the problem was what it would rest up against, because you couldn't put it in front, would be a brake hose. So that was obviously not ideal to put an impact against. So it just took a very long extension on the impact gun. So it did come off, but it was a bit challenging getting it off. So they're pretty easy to do otherwise. You jack the body up. Separate, obviously, you don't jack it on the rear trailing arm or the rear axle beam, because you need to move that to adjust for the new shock to go in. So get that all taken care of. I was doing one side at a time, so I put the car down on the ground, and I noticed that the top of the shock shaft shot up into the car.
Yep. I tried to warn you about that because I did it on the Gallant when I first put it together.
I think I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah.
And the problem is, so you sent me along these washers with the used parts from the old Talon struts that you sent me, and said, hey, you're going to need one of these per side. And you do need one per side. They go on the top of the bushings underneath the nut that holds the whole assembly together. What is not clear is that when you change from the factory strut bellows to an aftermarket strut bellows, the factory strut bellows in the cap is like a plastic cap on top of the bellows that the bump stop goes inside of.
Yeah.
But inside that cap, it's a built-in metal washer. And on the aftermarket ones, that cap that goes over the top is just plastic with no washer. So it looks identical until you actually like take it apart and feel what it's made out of. So what happened was there was nothing to stop the shock shaft from coming up through the rubber mounts because the metal washer that was built into the other bellows is not built into the aftermarket one. And it's not, again, clear that it's not there until you've put the whole thing together. Now, if I had done the assembly of the struts next to the car, I probably would have noticed it when I was taking the old ones apart. But since I did them on the bench inside the house in the air conditioning first, I didn't notice that. And even with your instruction, I thought I was good.
Now
I
I'm
was not good.
thinking. I'm trying to think. I think I cut them out of the old ones now, and that was just something I also forgot because it's been so long.
Yeah, that would make sense because, like I
Yeah,
said, they are in there, and the aftermarket ones are just plastic.
yeah,
So they don't obviously you can't retain the weight of a car in a millimeter thick piece of plastic.
yeah. So I
So
did know about it, and I tried to warn you, but I also think I forgot something too.
yeah, instructions unclear did fail, unfortunately, but not a huge deal. The only problem is now that's Wednesday night, right? I'm planning on leaving Thursday at 4:30 p.m. right after work. Um, but it was like Wednesday night, and at this point it was like 11 o'clock, and I was just frustrated. And I thought I was like 20 or 30 minutes from the end, and now I'm like I don't even know what to do because I wasn't sure yet what the problem was. So I got all frustrated, cleaned up all the tools, put them in the garage, shut the garage door, went in the house. Said, well, I got to be, unfortunately, Thursday now is the one day a week I have to go to the office. So I couldn't even work on it like much in the morning because I had to be up and ready to go to the office to be there on time. So I was like, oh, whatever. I'll just wake up super early and I'll start working on the car. So I was out there at like 5:30. Um, the took the right rear strut apart that came on the car, like the one that I was replacing, saw that I was missing that metal bushing built into the plastic. I was like, that explains the whole thing. So then I was able to fix it and create the proper, tension on everything, put it back together, put it in the ground. Everything's good. But by the time I got it all done, it was like, I don't know, 7:10, 7:15. Now I'm like, well, I got to be in the office by 8. I'm already running behind. Like it's going to be like the world's fastest shower, get everything ready and go in the super, super fast now as it is. So I don't have time to do the other side right now. So we're planning on leaving right at 4:30 after work. I can come home. I did swap around the parts on the other side already. So I'd already put the metal washer in the replacement strut for the left side. So all I had to do was slap the strut in. I just ran out of time in the morning. I was like, great, I can do this when I get home. So I left, I went to work, and I said to Naomi, I was like, hey, just we'll get everything packed up. I'll come home. I'll slap that strut in. Hopefully we can get out of here, by 5:30 at the latest. So then round about noontime on Thursday, my brain is going a million miles an hour. I'm all stressed out thinking about like all I have to do to get ready to leave to drive to San Francisco. I got a video chat from Naomi.
Yeah.
And she's in the garage and she's drenched in sweat. And she's like, hey, and she turned the camera around. She's like, so this is done. So she literally put the strut in for me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she was working from home. So she had that extra hour in the morning to get it done. And then at lunchtime, she went out and finished it.
Nice.
So don't know where she came from, but love that girl tremendously. And she completed the suspension install in my car while I was at work. So.
And it wasn't riding up higher in the back like we feared.
No, actually, the front is higher than the back is.
The only thing I can think of is we can double check part numbers. I don't know why they would do this, but maybe the top spring mount is different for an all-wheel drive.
So I'm thinking, I doubt it.
But also, all-wheel drive car would be probably like 100 pounds heavier in the front with a transfer case in there.
Yeah, maybe. It's kind of closer to the middle of the car, but
it's under the engine. It's right under the transfer case.
Yeah, I guess it is pretty much in line with the suspension there.
But I don't
Um,
think it would make that much of a difference.
yeah, it's not enough to be concerned about. It's got a little bit of a sag in the back. Also, I drove it all weekend loaded up with stuff for a road trip to and from San Francisco. So like we had a cooler full of ice, and I tried to put everything like I folded the back seats down and put it in the middle of the car so it wasn't hanging out over the back axle. But maybe once I dump everything out of it, it'll look a little more even. We'll find out. I haven't had a chance to clean it yet because literally I pulled in the driveway last night at 4 a.m. and went to bed. So
It's weird. I don't. I mean, it's not that much. I feel like I looked at pictures of my car with those springs in it, and it didn't really. It was more even, but not much more.
right. Either way, I'm not stressed out about it. It looks fine. I don't think anybody will ever say anything, and if they do, I really don't care because it's my car, and it drives almost really nice now
Yeah.
that the new struts are in it. Yeah.
Is it not too? It's not too stiff, or
No, it rides really nice. Honestly, it going down the highway. So the AC in that car is ice cold,
yeah,
which is nice because it was 105 degrees or whatever when we were trying to drive out there. Um, the AC is really nice and cold. The car is pretty quiet. There's not a lot of rattles in the highway. Like it just works. It drives like a modern car. There was not much. There was not much to say. I wasn't just sitting in, my Volkswagen Jetta wagon driving down the road. The cruise control works. The AC works. It's comfortable. The windows are up, nice and sealed. There's no major issues there, except for asterisk. Back to that one in a minute. Everything seemed pretty good in the car. So the one thing that still needs to be done before the car is perfect is I do have to do the control arms. I was going to do them before this trip. I just didn't get them in time.
mm-hmm.
Plus, I want to do the caster angle bushings
Mm-hmm.
in the control arms. So I knew I wasn't going to have time to do that either. So the control arm bushings are a little worn out, and the sway bar links are worn out. So there's on a bumpy road, it's got some sounds that sound concerning because there's a lot of rattling going around, but it's just worn out rubber. So it's still a little bit sloppy in that regard, but overall it's a transformed car. We were driving down Coastal Road 1 and through like between like Little Sur and Big Sur. There's some really nice windy, twisty roads there. And the car was way more planted than it's ever been since I've owned it. The struts were pretty blown in the back before, so there wasn't a lot of control while the car was turning because the struts were working too hard, bouncing up and down. And that is 100% gone now, and the car is like, it's a dream to take around corners now. Like it really is, and that getting rid of that rattle in those parts will just make it that much better, and the car will just be like a brand new car to drive.
Yeah, because we were worried about
So,
the spring rate being too stiff, but
because the all-wheel drive springs are stiffer supposedly than the front-wheel drive springs because of the diff and the carrier and all that stuff in the back. So,
but also those springs spent time on your old Talon, and then my Talon. It's not my old Talon; it's still my Talon.
your current Talon, yeah.
And yeah, so
Well, those springs have been in the possession of one of the two of us since the year 2000.
Yeah,
So those springs are 21 years old.
They're
They look pretty
in.
good. They look pretty good considering.
Yeah, considering both cars saw some weather.
Yeah, my car was a daily all through 4 seasons, and your car was for like a year or two. So they definitely saw some weather, and they look pretty good considering. They don't look like rusty chunks underneath that not rusty car, so that's good. Otherwise, that's going to paint them. But so that's all well and good. Suspension. What else happened? Oh, so the other thing that I was going to do to the car, when I was doing the suspension, Naomi asked what she could do to help to get the car ready. And I was like, well, I've been trying to get the cowl and the wipers painted for a long time because they're kind of rusty as they all get from the sun exposure. I was like, if you want to take those off the car and paint those while I do this, that would be a huge help because I want to get it done before the show. She's like, oh, perfect. That's easy enough. So she took those all off the car, scuffed them down, sanded them, washed them, painted them. They came out great. Looked brand new. Perfect. She put them back on the car. She didn't want to over tighten them, and I agree with this because they're over the windshield, and you don't want to A, strip out the little plastic things they go into, or B, crack the windshield, right? So they were on tight enough, but not over tightened. Everything seemed fine. Wipers worked. Driving the car down the road, all of a sudden, so let me back up a little bit. I apologize. We didn't wind up leaving Thursday night because by the time I got to work, And by the time I got all packed up, and then I decided last minute, I was like, you know what? It's going to be really hot out on this road trip. The radiator hoses in this car, if they're not original, are near original. I'd like to replace them, or at least get replacements to have with us in case we have an issue. I can have radiator hoses on the side of the road. They're decent shape, but they're just, the car's a 93 and they look original. They have that weird texture to them that the original hoses had.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to pick up some hoses. So we had to go to an AutoZone in town, and then had to get some dinner on the way out of town. And by the time we were ready to leave Thursday night, it was like 8:30. And I was like, well, if we drive now and we drive for 4 hours, it'll be midnight and we'll have to stop. And we'll only be 4 hours into our trip. Or we can just go home and get a good solid night's sleep and leave at like 5 a.m. So that's what we did instead. So we left at 5 a.m. Friday morning. It was nice and cool out. We, again, avoided LA. So we went all the way up through the desert, which actually is prettier anyway than driving on the highways through LA. And there's no traffic. So that was excellent. It stayed cool until, I don't know, 11:30 was when it started getting warm out. We had to put the windows up. We put the windows up. Both windows go up. Once they seal, all of a sudden we hear this like pop. And we're like, okay. And then I noticed there's a crack in the windshield.
Oh, weird.
That's strange. So we're driving a little more, and I see the crack grows in the windshield, and it grows in the windshield. And there's a second crack, and there's a third crack, and there's a fourth crack. Okay. I'm hearing this wind rushing sound. So I'm watching the corner of the windshield, and I can physically see the windshield moving up and down in the car.
Oh, weird.
So now I'm a little bit worried because you shouldn't have a windshield moving up and down in the car. We're probably, at this point, 7 hours into our road trip. So whether I continue to go or I turn around, it's like almost equidistant at that point, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, what do we do now? So we just kind of deal with it. I get to the next gas stop at a Love's gas station, like one of those big roadside ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, let's look into this. So I'm looking closely at the windshield. And I've never paid too much attention because it was there. I knew it was a cheap replacement at some point in the car's life because it has a couple of distorted spots in it, and it just is not a great windshield. So I'm looking closer at it, and it turns out that the entire windshield is off to the left, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch.
Oh.
But that must be where it's been glued in place, and I just never paid attention to it. So what happened was when we took the cowl and the wipers off, apparently whoever put the windshield in used them as part of the structure of the car. So when we didn't tighten them down as harsh as they were before, we didn't tighten the base of the windshield down like it was before. Now, bear in mind, I've driven this car I bought it in Alabama 2 years ago today, actually. Drove it to Boston.
Yep.
Drove it from Boston to Phoenix to Austin, Texas back to Phoenix, and I never had an issue. We took the cowl panel off, painted it, put it back on, and didn't over-tighten it, and now we had an issue. The cowl panel is not supposed to be structural.
No.
It's a very thin piece of metal. That's all it is. So this car apparently had a structural cowl panel. Where the left corner of the windshield was, there was not enough glue to hold it in place. And then I looked inside the windshield, like under the front edge of the dash, and somebody at some point in the car's life filled it with that black rubber caulking.
Yep.
Because they probably had a leak before. And it was probably at that point when they over-tightened the cowl panel to hold it in place.
Right.
So I'm looking closer at the windshield. I can physically take my hand and push on it and watch it bounce up and down.
Oh, boy.
Like 1/4 of an inch. Like a huge amount of, a very large amount of movement that the car shouldn't have in the windshield. Like the glass is structural to the car. Like it shouldn't have any movement in it at all. And then I'm looking up the side of the glass, and you know how most modern glass has that black painted edge on it.
Yep.
We know it from building model cars, and we hate having to paint it. I can see that is all the black paint is missing all the way from the base all the way to the roof in like what looks like the pattern of the black rubberized caulking underneath it. So the paint came off when it lost its seal.
Ah.
So it was loose from the top left corner of the roof to the bottom left corner of the fender. Thankfully, the way that first gen Talon and Eclipse are designed, they have that roof molding that goes from the base of the windshield up over to the hatch.
Yeah.
And it rivets into the car. Or
It's
screws into the
actually
car.
screwed on.
Screwed into the
You have
car.
to take that off to do the windshield.
Correct. So thankfully, that does hold the windshield in place. So the windshield can't come beyond that because it overlaps the windshield and it's screwed in place.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're like, all right, well, we don't want this windshield to keep cracking. How do we fix this? We need to go inside and see if we can find some kind of like a duct tape, which is ugly, but it is what it is. The windshield is already cracked to the point of there's probably 2, 3, or 4 separate cracks now. Basically what happened, it started spidering up from where the glue was still attached. So like the windshield was flexing to the point where it was still glued, and then it was cracking from there. So it's spidered all over, obviously, the driver's side. Thankfully below my line of sight, so it wasn't too bad. So I was filling up with gas, doing the oil. Actually, I used this rest stop also to check all the suspension bolts again, just because it had been, a few hundred miles. I wanted to make sure everything was nice and tight. She went inside to find some kind of adhesive, and as seen on TV, we got some flex tape.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer in the flex tape.
Yeah.
So it did 2 things for us. We put 2 pieces of it underneath the cowl.
Is it clear?
It's clear, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. We put 2 pieces of it underneath the cowl to kind of make up the difference between over-tightening the cowl and the windshield so that it had less room to move now. So almost like we jammed it in there like a wedge.
Is the stuff like thick?
It's pretty thick, yeah. It's a few mils. I mean, it's
weird.
I don't know. It's thicker than duct tape, but it's I don't know how to explain it. It's pretty thick. I'm trying to think. It's almost like a cardboard coaster.
Oh,
like it's like that thick, but it's clear plastic.
Huh.
But anyway, so we put a couple pieces inside there, and then I put a couple pieces on the windshield, and like I stretched it and smoothed it into place up against that molding I was talking about, and up over the edge of the molding. And once the sun hit it, man, that stuff is like, it's like a rock. The windshield, you can't even move it a micrometer now when you try to push on it. It doesn't move at all. So we had figured out when you put the windows all the way up, that's when you could watch the window buffeting because the way the air was moving inside the car. Yeah. So we did the rest of the trip up to that gas stop with the window cracked, just a little tiny bit, just to keep the pressure in the car from pushing the windshield out. But once we had that tape on there and had it all set down like that, we put the windows up and 85 miles an hour, not any movement at all from that windshield.
Weird.
So flex tape works.
Sounds like we'll have to add it to the roadside repair bag.
100%. 100%. It's 100% worth it. And it's the same one they show. I forget the guy's name. I was trying to remember it just now before I came on here. The Flex Seal guy.
I don't think he has a name. It's not like Billy Mays.
He did too many drugs.
But it's the other guy, the heavyset guy.
It's the guy that makes the boat with no boat, the screen bottom boat, and then covers it with Flex Seal.
We cut a boat in half. That's the new one too.
Yeah, exactly. Or he takes the meme of him now with his flex tape and the big jug of water, and it's like low employee morale and terrible work conditions. It's like pizza party, and it's the tape like that one. It's that guy. It's that product. The stuff. I'm 100% firm believer in it now. So it worked really well for the situation. Would it have worked well with something with moisture? I don't know. I did take the car through a car wash before Radwood, and it was one of the most brutal car washes I've ever been in, which I regretted immediately. It didn't have cloth. First of all, it wasn't touchless because there were no touchless car washes around. So I was like, whatever, I don't care. The car's filthy from a road trip. We got to get to the show. I ran through this car wash, and literally the fingers on the things that slap the car were like thick rubber. It was the worst car wash. I'm pretty sure it took paint off my car. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, with this giant car wash machine smashing the crap out of the windshield, it didn't leak or move a bit. And the tape isn't even like peeling on an edge. So I'm a firm believer in adding this to the bag of roadside repair tricks. So I think if you cracked an oil pan, if you cleaned it up enough, you could probably patch it with this and get home.
I'm
That's what
just
I was going to
reading the
say.
description of it. Super strong, rubberized, waterproof tape.
Yeah, that's how I would. That's how I would explain it. And it's clear
Oh,
enough that
here you go. Can be applied hot or cold, wet or dry, even underwater.
huh. Well, it was dry, so it worked very well in the dry. I'm not sure. Cannot confirm that it would work wet or cold because it was 110 degrees and it was very dry. We were in the desert, so it works in desert conditions. But it was a hell of a repair. But anyway, that's the end of the drama with the car. Car made it there, otherwise totally fine. The only other minor issue I had was the air conditioning would freeze up every, I don't know, hour and a half or so. But it
Hmm.
was so hot and the road temperature was so hot and the underhood temperature so hot that we just turned it off for maybe a minute, minute and a half, just long enough for it to start getting uncomfortable inside the car. And you turn it back on and it kicked back on cold for another hour and a half. So we got a little more time out of it if we left it on economy, and about an hour and a half with it on full blown ice cubes. So I'll have to look into that, but I don't often drive the car for 12 hours, so it's not really a concern. There were a couple of things I saw as far as what causes that. One of them is possibly moisture in the system. Um, the other one, obviously, is just moisture outside the system because it's so cold and the air is so hot. But if there's moisture in the system, the car still has R12, so I don't want to mess with it because it works.
Yeah.
So it's like it works enough to not worry about it. And unless it starts getting worse, I think I'm probably just going to leave it as is because it's not really it's a quirk more than a problem, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So until it becomes a problem, we'll just kind of leave it alone. So I mean, it's a '93 car that's never had the AC apart. I don't want to break the seals now.
Yeah. So when you put them on economy, it cycles the compressor on and on. And
Yeah, that's what I figured. So
yeah.
I'd get more time before it froze over because there was time where it would not be pumping cold air constantly. So
Yeah. You can feel it. It'll kick on and off.
yep, and you can definitely feel it in a non-turbo Eclipse because it saps some power for sure. So, but yeah, overall it was a good trip with that car. Um, we drove up mostly like through Bakersfield and then up the five for a bit, and then across to San Mateo, where the show actually was. Made it to the show, met a bunch of people. That's a whole other topic. After the show, we did some of the San Francisco touristy stuff. Went down to the Golden Gate Bridge. Drove back and forth over the bridge. Went down to the pier to the restaurant district down there. Bought some touristy stuff for people back home. Had a nice dinner at a Italian restaurant, Italian seafood restaurant, I should say.
I saw you went
And
down Lombard Street.
we went down Lombard Street, which is definitely a neat experience. Everybody on Lombard Street, nobody commutes on Lombard Street. Everybody's a tourist. So cars go very slow. There was a car in front of us that I would guess was a bachelorette party based on the outfits and the amount of women squeezed into this Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like hanging out of it, taking pictures and being generally pretty slow. So, but whatever. We were tourists too, so it didn't bother me. Just cruising down the hill slowly. So it's an interesting like engineering marvel for its time. Thinking that that street's been there since the early turn of the 19th century, 20th century. So it's cool. It's a neat city. I went into it with mixed feelings based on what people had been telling me that it was like. And I will tell you from experience, it's not bad. So
It can't be any worse than New York or something. Or
that's what it was. People were like, oh man, there's homeless people everywhere. People are pooping on the streets. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I think the only
have you
people we
been to
saw
any
even
major city?
right. I've seen people poop on the streets in Boston before. It's not a big. It's not. I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not shocking at this point. I think the only people we saw causing any issues were actually car and motorcycle people down in like the touristy area doing burnouts and wheelies, which is, it's annoying and childish, obviously, but it's also kind of entertaining. So, and the cops are down there, so they all got pulled over and got written tickets. So it's not like it's a free for all, but it was an interesting time. It was a good time. Um, I would go back when I have more time, but we had to turn around and come home because Monday comes at you fast. So we left Sunday morning, and I guess we can go back to the show afterwards. So let's go to the show. So Rad was back.
It sure is.
Car life is back. Events are happening. Um, they had a pretty big venue. It reminded me a lot of Redwood 2. It was that same kind of vibe.
That's what it looked like in the pictures.
Yep. It was the same kind of vibe that Redwood 2 was. That was at the Phoenix Club in LA or Anaheim. This was at the San Mateo Event Center. So actually, people who are local to our home there in Massachusetts know like the Topsfield Fairgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
where it has like grassy parking areas and cement parking areas and like a corral where there would be horses, and then a building where there was food and a building with bathrooms. It was a similar situation to that. Like it's a fairgrounds kind of vibe. So they had the food open. And food was reasonably priced for an event. Like $12 for a burger and French fries and a drink, which is not cheap. But at the end of the day, like it could have been 30. You know what I mean? Like, so it's fine. The only thing that was a little bit tough was the event space only allowed one gate to be open for entry. So
Weird.
we did have two lines going in the gate, and one of the things I was doing to help out was I was checking tickets and giving out wristbands. But they had a team of security guards that was there as well that had to go through every car.
Oh.
Yeah. So that delayed things a little bit, and the line to get in was at times a little bit overbearing, but people were pretty cool about it. In the same general area was like the county's COVID vaccination site was in the same part of the big parking lot outside the show. So that was happening at the same time. And there was a gemstone show like across the event space at another spot. So there was a lot of activity in the general area. So that's why we only had the one gate to work with. So the security guards checking through the cars took a little bit of extra time. And it took a couple of talking to the security guards to tell them, like, can't like slam the trunks and then like slap the quarter panel to tell them to go into the show. Like, that's not cool. Like, the guy's like, I watched the security guard take the trunk lid of this 308 Ferrari and like slam it closed, and then just like walk up next to the car and like do the whole like typical cop security guard move where he's like on the quarter panel, like, you're good to go. And like, you can't do that. Like, just tell them. They don't appreciate you smashing their car with your fist. Like, it's a car show. It's probably fine, but still, you just can't do that. Somebody's gonna get mad. There's some pretty high end stuff here. So they stopped doing that eventually. But like watching one of the security guards take like an M3 with the M3 lightweight fiberglass spoiler and just fling the trunk open and watch the spoiler hit the back window of the car, like, like, it was definitely interesting on that spec of things. But other than that, it was pretty good. So 500 plus cars.
Wow.
Yeah, 500 plus cars. 4 Lancia Delta Integrales. 2 Ferrari 308s. One, which was like a 250,000 mile car that the guy drives. It was spectacular until he got hit in his hotel parking lot the night before, which is annoying, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then one that's also a high mileage car with Pennsylvania tags. He drives all over the country. And it had these giant hella lights on the front and a roof rack on the engine cover that was covered with all their luggage. And they literally just use this 308 to drive all over the country with. Super cool use case for that car. Like, probably expensive, but still a cool vehicle to drive all over the country. And all I could think of seeing the front of a 308 with giant hellas with the white hella covers was Cannonball Run.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
every car in that movie has got giant hellas on it. And this was that same look, and it was super cool. Other than that, typical Radwood. The vibe was good. People were happy. People were happy to be back in touch with each other. Literally in touch. Some people hugging everywhere. Like, hey, world's a little bit normal, I guess. So y'all do you. Yeah, it was not a lot to report otherwise. Crazy good cars. I managed to park next to, based on the order we came in, a deep burgundy 85 Olds Cutlass,
Hmm.
which is like exactly my car from high school, right down to the color this guy chose to paint it. I think it was the same Ford color code. So it was weird being parked next to like, it was like being parked next to 1997 Brad with 2021 Brad right there. So somehow I was still driving an old chip box, but that's beside the point. But it was neat. I met a bunch of listeners of the show. Spent some time hanging out with Alex Stadel. So big ups to him and his wife. He actually brought me some rad era Matchbox cars to hang in my garage.
Nice.
So that was cool. He brought his, as he self describes it, his currently running rad era car, his Porsche Boxster. So neat to see that. Who else did I meet while I was there? I'm horrible with names, unfortunately, so I don't want to say wrong names, I guess. I met a Twitter user. I know his Twitter username. I can't think of his first name, unfortunately. Midnight Derifto. Super nice guy. A kid named Patrick who takes pictures. He's a photographer. And I don't remember his name, his username online, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The people from the East Coast that do those one hell of a town stickers. They stickers and buttons and different neat like automotive ephemera.
Yep.
They're Saab and Porsche fans. They had a booth set up there. So I met them being, as you know, we're all from New England, so we had some in common to talk about right there, and they were out just for the show. And they had bought a Porsche 944 that they've been taking to a few shows out there, and they were planning on leaving in storage out there and then flying home. More on that in a minute. Super cool people, Sid and David. I met those of them. Got a couple stickers. I got you some "I love terrible ugly cars" stickers. So, our terrible cars, that's what it is. I love terrible cars stickers.
Yes.
So I could get some of those for you. They had a Radwood exclusive sticker, which is kind of neat. Neat stuff. It's neat because they don't have the typical car stuff. They have like, they're a little more alternative from what you'd expect from car people. And it's awesome to see that. Again, that's the whole Radwood, like, you know, open and accepting culture that's there. So that was neat. Let's see. What else to talk about the show? I mean, there were two Monteros. That's what Ottawa Topic listeners care about. There were two Monteros and two Starions and one Eclipse. That was the Mitsubishi content. So I don't know who owned. There was a Fiji blue Starion that was really nice. And there was a red Starion that belongs to Instagram user Star Cruiser Drive Yard. Star Cruiser Drive Yard, I think it's called. He does like he does stickers of Starions and Celicas and that kind of stuff. So look him up. I don't know who owned one of the Monteros. The other one was owned by Andrew P. Collins, the Jalopnik writer. I think he's Jalopnik, right? Or Car Bibles now. I don't know what his current thing is. Is it Car Bibles or is it Car Bibles through Jalopnik? They're separate or related? Separate, right?
Totally separate. Car Bible's
Okay.
owned by the Drive.
Okay, so he's with Car Bibles.
He's the
now.
head editor.
Okay. So he used to be with Jalopnik, though, I think, right? That's why I'm confusing it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Anyway, so his Montero was there. There was a couple of Subaru SVXs, you know, like I said, 4 Lancia Delta Integrales, E30 Touring. Countless awesome cars. I did learn at this event that I do want to have a Peugeot 505 with a manual at some point. I know it's kind of stealing away from your thunder of wanting a French car, but I didn't fall in love with one until I heard one and saw it driving away. And that big sedan with like the really low belt line with the sound that car made was like, oh, I need that car. So those are neat cars. What else? A guy from the internet that we know, Ampro Automotive and Ampro Engineering, are his 2 Instagram accounts. One for his weird car taste and one for his RC cars. And obviously, we dig RC cars, and he does vintage RC stuff from the 80s and restores it, which is right up our alley. Also does modern RC stuff too, but give him a follow. He's got some cool stuff out there. He actually won Raddest Import with his Fiat Ritmo Cabriolet, which is, I guess the best way to describe it would be an Italian Volkswagen Rabbit Cabby. Like it has like the handle
Hmm.
roll bar and a plaid interior and a super cool car. So yeah, overall it's a great show. It's good to see everybody, the whole official Radwood group together again, and help them out. And Naomi worked merch like usual. Met everybody and anybody because everybody goes to the merch table. But they did very well, and it's encouraging to see that things are getting back to what we're used to. So I'll finish the trip story up. We drove home the following morning. We went down the coastal road. Like I said, we had a pretty scenic day. It was a perfect weather day. The fog burned off probably around 10:30 or so. It was pretty heavy fog up till then.
So was it cooler in San Francisco?
Oh my goodness, yes.
So that marine layer is a real thing.
It was in the morning. So the actual event at Radwood was in San Mateo, which is a little bit further away from the coast. Not like a lot, but a little bit. And it was pretty warm. It was probably high 80s, low 90s most of the day. But Sunday morning and then Saturday night we went into San Francisco. I mean, it was sweatshirt weather. It was 55 degrees, so it was not warm. And then when we left, I think part of the reason that the fog hung around as long as it did is because that area has been having a heat wave, and now it was cool. So again, it was probably 60 degrees even in the sun on Sunday morning, driving through like San Francisco and then the coast. So it was not warm. It was not anything like they have been experiencing. Yeah. So we went down Coastal Road 1, went through all the cities there, all the way down to like where Bakersfield pretty much meets up with the 10 down there. The only catch we had that day, thankfully, was not ours. We ran into the fine folks from one hell of a town. I came around a corner and I was like, oh, 944 parked on the side of the road with Vermont plates. I know who that is. So we pulled over to check out and see if they were okay, and they weren't there. They had a little sign in their car with their phone number. Not that there was any service. And it said, hey, we're down at, and it was the name of a restaurant called like the Netathane? I don't remember. It's a weird name for some restaurant out that way. It's on Route 1. So like, well, we'll take a ride down there and we'll see if we can find them and see if they have some simple problem we can help with. I brought all the tools with me. I had sockets and wrenches and screwdrivers and all the basic stuff you might need to fix a car on the side of the road, as long as you don't need any parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down. We found them at the restaurant and said, hey, what's going on? Because we'd met them the day before. Because, again, they had a merch booth set up next to the Radwood merch booth. So we spent the day next to them pretty much. And they're like, oh, hey, thanks for stopping in. Like, what's going on? So David said he thinks they blew the timing belt in the car.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, what's it doing? So he said what it's doing. And I was like, that doesn't sound good. And I said, we can probably pull a timing cover off and take a look. And if it's not that, we can figure out something else, right? So he's like, oh, I'm not sure. So we're trying to figure out how to help him out. So the problem is they were kind of in a bad spot at the top of the hill where there was nowhere for a tow truck to get in there without blocking Route 1 on a blind curve, which is obviously not ideal. So I was sitting there. I'm like, all right, I got an idea. I said, David, you and I can go up there. You're at the top of a hill. We can push the car back a little bit so you can get a clear shot. Just push the clutch in and roll it down the hill. I'll ride behind you. And there's a big open parking area under the trees in the shade where there's plenty of room for a tow truck. So we can at least get the car like in a better spot. And he's like, all right, that's cool. So we went up there. He cranked it over real quick just so I could hear it. And unfortunately, it's definitely coming from inside the timing cover. Don't even need to take it apart and look. You can tell. But it's still turning. So it's probably the tensioner let go, I would assume. Because if a belt let go, you wouldn't probably hear it flapping around as much. So it just sounds like it lost time. And the tensioner failed, is my guess. My uneducated, I don't know Porsches very well guess, but I do know Mitsubishi's, and that whole entire timing belt design is licensed from Mitsubishi. So it's not a good sound. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's interference too. So
It's definitely interference. Yep, and it let go while driving at speed. So chances are pretty good that that motor is junk, whether it's a belt or a tensioner. But they were sold the car recently under the guise of it has a brand new timing belt.
oh,
So that also lends credence to possibly being the tensioner. Maybe somebody didn't put a tensioner in it, um, or didn't put it in proper, or didn't do the
or
water pump proper,
or
or the
didn't do
balance
the
belt let
balance
go.
belt.
Yeah. So either way, the balance belt will usually take out the timing belt, and you have an issue. So either way, the car ceased running while driving, which is never positive. So so the car down there in the shade, managed to went back down, and then picked up Sid and Naomi, and went back up to where the car was, where David was, and left them with a bunch of ice water. And the tow truck had promised to be there within about an hour of then, so they were comfortable staying there because they were in the trees and they could, be comfortable there and not have to sit in the bright sun at the top of the hill and be clipped by a car passing by. So I couldn't get them fixed better than that. At least we got them to a better spot. You got to do what you got to do. So we tried our best, but we made new friends and helped them a little bit. But other than that, the trip was uneventful. We drove the rest of the way home. Made it home about, like I said, 4 o'clock yesterday morning, and here we are. So, we had a long day because I had to work today. So, somehow I forgot to take today off.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Can't help you there.
nope, that was my own fault. I remembered to take Friday off, but I forgot to take today off. So, it's fine. At least I didn't have to go to the office today, so I was able to just roll out of bed at 8 and walk into my office and start working. So, but yeah, so that's the weekend plus the repairs in a nutshell. I don't think there was anything else major happening with the car between me fixing it and Naomi finishing it and us getting on the road and being successful. Oh, I did buy a new tool. An auto off topic tool review.
Oh yeah,
Icon, the higher end line of Harbor Freight tools.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So they have the regular Harbor Freight, super cheap stuff. Then they have a middle of the road line, which I can't remember the name of, but it's whatever Pittsburgh is the middle of the road line. So you can get like the super cheap stuff there. They didn't get the Pittsburghs, and then they have the Icons. And the Icons are significantly more expensive than the Pittsburghs by a lot.
See, I think it would
And
be the San Francisco's, but
why is that?
Pittsburgh, San Francisco.
Sure.
There's also Chicago.
Oh, Chicago is their electric tools. Chicago Electric, right? That's Harbor
Yeah,
Freight's electric tools. So anyway, Icon is their brand of higher end tools. They're trying to compete with the Snap-on and Craftsman of the world.
sure.
Listen though, I bought the Icon torque wrench.
Yeah,
If you didn't tell me it was a Harbor Freight tool and handed it to me, I never would guess. The functionality of the whole tool is up there with a Craftsman for sure. Maybe not quite as polished as a Snap-on, but it's a really good piece. It's a little. They have $30 torque wrenches there, but the Icon one it's like 110 or 115 for the 3/8 drive. It comes with all the certifications and all
yeah.
the calibrations that the cheap ones don't come with. And I'm super impressed with it. And I've only used it a few times now. I used it for the suspension install, and I used it on the wheels. And it functions like a very nice tool for something about for Harbor Freight. So it's not a problem. It's a good tool. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking to buy a torque wrench, the Icon torque wrench is good. And I was sold on these because I used somebody's Icon, like just normal 3/8 ratchet. And you can tell a cheap ratchet the second you start using it just on how it feels when it clicks. And they feel, again, like, a Craftsman quality ratchet. So I'm not sure what the difference is. I mean, they probably have finer teeth and gears and, better construction practices than the cheap ones do. But overall, they're pretty good. So Can recommend. So I've gone on now, Andrew, for quite some time. What do you have to say
You
today?
have.
Yeah, that's a full hour,
Well,
an hour of Brad. Sorry, move on.
yeah.
What'd you do?
Well, a few people have been trying to get me to go to the Andover Cars and Coffee
Mm-hmm.
in Andover, Mass, and finally it was lined up with my schedule, so took a ride over there, which is nice because it's pretty close, and it was a good mix of cars, real good
Is
mix
it
of cars.
on 114?
No, it's in downtown Andover.
Like 133?
125.
Okay, yep, that works too.
Like
Excellent.
downtown, like near the Cafe Nero, and there's like some other coffee shops.
Where the Chevy dealer is?
Nope, opposite
Uh,
direction.
Other downtown?
Yeah,
Newer downtown versus old downtown?
I think so. I've never been to that part of Andover ever. Like
Okay.
to me, Andover is just like a stretch
Uh,
of
it's a pass through at
condos
one. It's
along
yeah,
114.
114. Yeah, it's a pass
Uh,
through.
um, but no, it was
Living in Georgetown, like I did for so long, I spent a little bit of time in Andover, so I knew a little bit more than somebody who's on the North Shore, like you are in Peabody. The Merrimack Valley knows Andover a little more, I think. But
yeah,
anyway,
it's in between. It's kind
yeah.
of, but anyway, good mix of cars, a lot of good vintage stuff. Um, there was a super clean 300ZX. I was surprised to see I hadn't seen a Mark IV Supra in forever.
Yep.
There was a really cool um, four-door 510.
I saw that I had like Connecticut plates or something too, which I thought was
Yeah,
strange.
yeah.
Come from far.
Our
Didn't
other
see many.
one of our other Jordans that we're friends with, who has the Datsun 620 pickup truck.
Yep.
That is a
Yeah.
620, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a 521.
okay, he's gonna yell at me next time.
JJ Dotman, I think is his Instagram name.
Yeah, he was there with that truck, and he knew him, and his name is Devin. Yeah, I ended up talking to him. He was a real nice guy. New dad club, we found out, so
Excellent.
we were talking about that. What else was there? There was like an Alfa Romeo Milano, which I hadn't seen in like forever, and it had like factory Recaros. They must have been factory because they matched the back seat.
Okay.
Um,
I think they are factory in some of those cars.
yeah, really cool car. Yeah, there was that. I mean, there was air cooled Porsches. Uh, there was the cleanest SRT4 I've seen in like forever, like a totally stock one.
Yeah, those aren't a thing anymore.
I didn't think they existed anymore. Yeah,
I did see one in California. I took a picture and sent to you actually the other day.
yeah,
I was like, hey, look, there's two in the same weekend. Opposite coasts.
yeah. So yeah, that's a good show. I'll definitely try to make that one again.
Yeah, I was impressed looking at not only your pictures, but other people's pictures too. I didn't see like a line of new Chargers and a line of new Mustangs and a line of new name your other car. Like it was a
There's
lot more vintage stuff.
there's
There was
like
some stuff I
10,
could see, but
there's like 10 Mark Sevens, but
they must have come together.
it's like the most common new. I mean, I see a lot of Mark 7 GTIs, but they are also a really good car. So
Yeah, I mean it's probably the best sub $40,000 car you can buy for a daily.
it's the only, well, other than you can get a Civic Si or a GTI, right? Like that's really the only thing.
Yeah,
It's not it doesn't compete with the Type R. It's not the same. I
no,
would
but it's
say
also not 50 grand like a Type R.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
the closest is to it'd be like either a Civic Si or a GTI.
yeah. If I was in the market to spend like average new car money, I'd have a hard time buying anything but a new GTI.
And had I not wanted more room, I would have bought one instead of the All
Right,
Track.
right. Actually, funny story. I did see a Great Falls Green All Track on Coastal Route 1 with mass plates.
Weird.
Yeah. I was
Well,
like, oh, it's Andrew.
what was funny is we spent last week up in New Hampshire around Winnipesaukee, and obviously a lot of Subarus, a lot of cross tracks.
Sure.
But that's the most all tracks I've seen. Like it's just funny. I hadn't seen that many in a while, and they're all up around the lake apparently.
Interesting.
I also saw like my parents own some property up there. We were going to check it out. I came around the corner on the road there, and you can tell. I mean, it's the road also leads to a lot of waterfront houses, and
Yeah.
just an R8 was coming the other way. I was like,
Yep.
that checks.
So there's money up there, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
A lot more
that's
than it
why.
used to be. Yep.
Yeah, and my friend that lives up there was showing me is like, oh, I bought my midlife crisis car, and he had a RS5.
Oh,
It's
that's
like good.
neat.
It's like good for you, man.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, yeah, my Cars and Coffee was cool. Speaking of events, before we forget, Mistlewood Concours d'Elegance is coming up on
Sunday,
Sunday, July
the
18th. Yeah.
18th.
Yep. I was thinking about it. I actually don't know what time it starts, but it's
Oh,
probably
I
around
don't know
like
on top
10.
of my
It's
head.
probably around like 10 in the morning, I bet, for like
I can double
spectators.
check it. I can double check it while you continue to talk.
So, yeah. So, anyway, that's coming up. Brad's going to check on the start time for that. I'm sure you can buy tickets at the door, but I know your dad runs it. He told me he's got
9 a.m.
9 a.m. He told me there's like some really heavy metal coming.
Yeah, there usually is.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good show. I'm actually upset that I'm going to miss it because I'm coming to Massachusetts for a good chunk of time, but I'm coming the following weekend, which stinks, but it is what it is.
All right. And then Project Car updates. I did swap that O2 in the Galant.
Excellent. With the correct connector now.
Yeah, it worked. Car runs a lot better. That's why I took the Cars and Coffee. And I sent the other one back, and Summit gave me a full refund. So cool.
Perfect. Perfect.
And then I finished the snorkel install on the Montero. Horrible, horrible, fake Chinese part.
Okay.
It's mostly the adapter to the inner fender that was just totally off. Like the snorkel fit fine, and like getting it on the contour of the fender with the template was fine.
I wonder
But
if that's because you have a U.S. market vehicle and it's made for, you know, some Asian market vehicle. And it's got a different intake. Because one of the biggest changes in the market of vehicles would probably be the airbox, right? Because it depends on air emissions.
well, the body side of it that touched the inner fender lined up perfectly, but where the tube came out, it like pointed completely away from where the snorkel would sit.
Hmm.
So I had to heat it up with a heat gun and bend it back over, as long also with like trimming a ton of it off, and it worked for the
I mean,
most part.
it looks good.
So I could only get a clamp on the snorkel side of it. I bought a Spectre adapter that has like, it was like 2 3/4 to 3 inch.
Okay.
It was just like basic rubber instead of silicone. Worked really well. But I couldn't. It had there's like such a severe angle on it going to that adapter. The clamp would just slide off.
Right.
But it's
But
so tight,
it's tight enough anyway.
it can't physically move off of it because it's bolted to the inner fender and the outer and
Right.
the fender. Also, I'm
And I
playing with
mean,
it.
let's be honest. Let's be honest. You're not going to ever submerge the thing in water anyway.
No, because
So
because as I'm looking at it, and the airbox, where the factory airbox has a little snorkel that attaches to the inner fender of the
Yep.
on the engine side, it's like not even watertight there. You can move it away from there because it's just got foam sealer.
Right.
So this thing's not watertight.
So you
Like
need to make
watertight.
some more modifications if you were to go fording rivers.
And it's not really. That's not really why people use these things. It's for fresh air and cold air, because if you drive on dusty trails, like we do in Maine in the summertime, sometimes you turn it
Yep.
the snorkel head the other way to not ram
Dirt in
dusty
it.
air down there.
Yep.
Plus, it just looks cool. So
Again, it's glamour mods. It's fine.
eventually, I unbolted the fender from the top and got it to flex out a little bit, and that's how I got to the bolts that were in the back. Because I was like, I could move the fender off or pull the washer bottle out for the headlights that's in the way. It was far easier to move the fender off.
Was it really?
Oh, yeah.
I would think the washer bottle would be easier to move, but I guess I wasn't there. So.
Nope. Plus, the antenna was in the way. So like it was just easier just to back the fender up. So
But it's on. It looks cool. So did I see you had to actually drill holes in your A pillar?
yes,
That made me nervous.
yeah, I don't know. And then 3 rivets held the bracket on.
Yeah, that just it's probably my New England like fear of rust that gets
I
me going on
I
that all the
sprayed some fluid
time.
film in there.
Yeah, as we would for sure, but I see like pristine sheet metal being drilled, and I just go,
I mean, you don't want
uh,
to see what I did to this fender to make it fit.
no, I saw what you did at the Fender actually because he did send a picture, and I wasn't going to bring it up because it was not pretty.
Oh, it's ugly, but it's all under the snorkel.
Yeah, it was not pretty. You should probably buy another Fender just to have it.
I guess.
Yeah, whatever. It's not like you're taking it off anyway, so the truck gets sold. It goes with the truck.
I mean, I put paint over the bare metal,
Oh, of course. I
and
mean, you have to do that.
then I also sprayed fluid film in
All inside
there,
the Fender.
inside the fender and all over the hardware and around the holes before I put the thing on.
And it's not like you drive the thing all winter anyway. So
No, I mean
either way, it hurts a little.
the paint wasn't great, anyways.
No, it hurts a little, but I get it.
I
So
mean, if I wanted to, you could take it off and the whole car could be repainted. It's not,
yeah, it is what it is. But it looks
but
cool, and that's all that matters.
it does look cool, but
Yeah.
it was a pain. I wouldn't recommend it.
As you attack the mall parking lot,
Uh,
you'll be very
well, when you're here, maybe one of the nights I'll make you help me put the front bumper on.
traverse the parking lot of the mall. Oh, okay. Put a pump around.
Yeah.
We should get in contact with Andy, who is a much better welder than the two of us combined, and have him come by and give us a little assistance with that. But I have seen one get built, so I know how it's built. So
I mean, I can weld it because you're just gonna. It's just gonna. I'm just gonna grind the welds down and then paint it, so it's not gonna be. It's just gonna be all
Well,
smooth.
I'm just saying it would behoove us to have somebody who's better at welding present, so that you'd have less grinding to do.
I mean, I did a pretty good job with my exhaust
Okay.
on the Galant, so
I
I think I'm ready to tackle it.
okay. Well, I'm just
It's
saying we could bring Andy over anyway, just to be like,
well, the good thing is it's nice thick
just
metal.
just to hang out with Andy. That's all. Come on over, Andy. You can come over and help us.
Yeah, it's not thin sheet metal. It's annoying to weld.
No, it's very thick, and you could definitely weld it together, or like almost like stick weld it together if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's the kind of metal that's very forgiving. It's almost like what they give you when you first take a welding class.
Exactly.
It's that same heavy gauge metal. So
And then I'll grind
shouldn't
it
be a problem.
down and prime it, and I've got that silver textured paint, so it'll be silver, kind of match.
Problem is that will be after the main forest rally, so you will not have your Glamour Mod front bumper for the main forest rally.
Oh, well,
So,
then I might not do it while you're here. I might do it before then because
wow.
there's like 2 more weeks I can do that.
Yeah, because I'm coming into town the Thursday before the rally.
Oh,
So,
yeah, because then I bought some new IPF fog lights.
Yep.
So I've got driving lights, and now I bought fogs, and they'll look good in the silver because they have the chrome, like egg crate over them.
Sure. And they'll complement your snorkel well.
And they're amber.
Okay.
They say super off road.
Perfect. Iron Man Stewart's super off road. I like it.
So
I'm into it. I like the way the truck's coming out. Honestly, I definitely do. And even if it never goes off road again, at least
it goes off road. So we're busy.
It's
All
fine.
right. So speaking of things that go off road, we got word from Crankshaft Culture. So
Yep.
that's
and Andy and Mercedes.
Yep, Lilienthal. They've been on the show. Maine, our neighbor to the north here in Massachusetts, is apparently actively canceling Delica registrations.
Which seems illegal because this is America.
Well, I don't know. It's a states thing, right? Because it's states versus federal.
Sure.
We don't have a national vehicle registry. We have a state by state.
Sure.
Even though the federal law allows imports 25 years or older.
Yep.
That doesn't necessarily guarantee the state will allow it.
I think the problem that I have, this is without getting into too sticky of a political situation here. This is a very similar argument to what's already been going on for years in another hobby. The gun people have this same conversation all the time of states' rights versus federal rights versus
Well,
your own
it's
personal
even the
rights.
same with marijuana. It's
Sure,
because
yeah, 100%.
it's still a class 1 narcotic, but it's legal in some states.
Correct.
But you
But
could
I
still be
think
brought up in federal charges for it if you had too much of it.
correct. But I think the issue we're having here with this delicate registration thing is you have a vehicle that you bought and paid for with your money, and the state taxed you on when you registered. And now the state is saying we're canceling the registration, and you can no longer legally use this in our state with plates from our state that you paid your taxes on. I think that's where the sticky part of the situation is coming in. And again, I don't want to get into a whole political conversation here because, we're not going to have a 2A conversation on a car podcast. But it's kind of the same. It's a very similar discussion, a very similar where does the right of a citizen of the United States trump the right of a citizen of your local state. I would have less of an issue with it if we were dealing with the California, where it was never legal to bring something there. So even when the 25-year import rule became a thing, California was like, nah, not here, man, because you can't smog it. They never were like, oh, cool, a bunch of people have these cars, live here, and pay taxes here, and have had it for a long time. We're just going to cancel their registration and say they can't use it anymore.
Well, the reality of it is there's probably less than 100 of these cars in Maine.
I would bet there's less than 20 of them in Maine. It's not a common vehicle. And
It's really weird because their argument is that they don't meet safety standards, don't meet emissions, couldn't drive on the highway, but there's a bunch of old cars that can't do that either.
Right.
So
this is where it concerns me a bit too, where it's the state coming in and saying, well, you can't drive this vehicle anymore because it doesn't meet emissions and it's unsafe, when it meets the emissions for its time.
So when
it's safe for its time based on the country that it came from.
Yeah. So if you look at a lot of times on the A pillar of a car, it'll have a sticker that said this car conforms to the applicable laws when it was built. So that basically grandfathers everything in.
Right. But in this case, it does not conform to the applicable laws of when it was built in the state it's being registered in, which I think is their point. I think what happened here, honestly, is they took a look at all of these guys who were bringing in the K pickup trucks, the Honda Actis and the Suzuki Carries and all of these, which are truly cannot go on the interstates, and they're being registered as vehicles, not like ATVs.
Supposedly they can be, though. They can do but what's the...
And okay, you're right. They probably can.
Hold on. Yeah. Around here, the minimum speed limit on the interstate is 45.
45, yeah.
They can absolutely do 45.
They can do 55. So I guess that argument's not valid either. But I think...
honestly, I think it's... nobody's looked into this. This is just my conjecture that it's UTV dealers.
Ooh, conspiracy theory. I'm into it. Let's go.
That's UTV dealers, that they don't want people buying these instead of buying UTVs.
Sure. But again, the amount of people buying these $5,000 vehicles, not Delicas are more money, but the K trucks, the amount of people buying those $5,000 K trucks aren't the same people that are going to go buy a $25,000 side by side. And if the kind of person who's going to go buy a $25,000 side by side would probably also just buy a $5,000 K truck if they wanted one.
Yeah, but maybe the thought is that these aren't car people. They're making these rules up. They think that it's going to push people to buy these other things that they can tax them more on.
They get more sales tax, but they get less road tax because they register it as
I don't know.
ATV.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Because I've also heard from the Revival Motoring podcast that Pennsylvania's canceling K registrations, I think.
Okay. It's not good.
Um,
I know
yeah,
there are a couple of provinces in Canada that are no longer allowing new right-hand drive registrations.
yeah. I
So,
mean, really, all it would take um, is just a group of these people to lawyer up,
yeah.
probably, and just
It's less of an issue, I think, than something like a 2A because it's not as politically charged and there's less people involved, and it would fly under the radar, I think, a little more. I think it's good that Andy has brought it kind of to the limelight with the article on his website because it will encourage people to get together. And there's enough importers in this country. I mean, hell, there's enough importers in Maine probably to get together and fight this because that's their livelihood. They buy and import these things to sell them, and that's how they make their living. And I don't see the legal standing and how this can stay. The California thing has been on the book since day one, and they're not actively canceling registrations on things people already owned unless they can no longer meet the safety and emission standards for the year they were built. You know what I mean? So if a Delica can pass the emissions of a diesel vehicle sold here in 1988, it shouldn't matter. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that driving a Delica on the interstate, you can do 75 miles an hour.
well, and they were sold here as other
Yeah.
vehicles.
They were sold here as a Mitsubishi van,
Yeah.
just not in four-wheel drive. And it's no more dangerous than the same year Volkswagen, Westphalia van or a Toyota van or a Nissan.
Again, it's the same vehicle,
Yeah, I mean
just as
it's
slow.
so arguably faster, actually.
Yeah.
So I think Delica vans got caught up in the shitstorm of the K trucks, which are causing a bit of an issue. I think K trucks are the crux of the whole thing. I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from, but I think the K trucks are it. And I think somebody saw a picture of a Delica van and doesn't realize how big of a vehicle it actually is.
And I don't think they can, but they shouldn't bug you about K trucks either.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I can see where that's coming from. I can see some NIMBY person saying, "Oh my God, that truck is so small, that man is going to die." But then also, he probably has a motorcycle at home. But
yeah, it's no different than a motorcycle.
Or he has a '57 Chevy at home that would impale him through the heart if he drove into a curbstone wrong. So there's the only person you're putting in danger in your K vehicle and your Delica van is yourself. And
it's just I don't. It's just
it's scary.
Okay. Well, it's like somebody had a comment on one of the articles was like, "Oh, I'm glad they solved everything else in the state, so now we can focus on this."
Right? Yeah, no drugs.
Of us with JDM into ports.
Yeah. The ports are not still flowing drugs through them. Definitely not anymore. There's no more, homelessness at all. It's all fixed. They're moved on to Delica vans. So keeping people who want to buy an interesting car safe from themselves. I mean,
what is there 5 Delicas in Portland, Maine? Well,
that's what I'm saying. If there are 50 Delicas, if there are 50 Delicas in the entire state of Maine registered there, I'd be surprised. I know they're probably one of the more popular vehicles registered here from overseas, but if there were 50 of them, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So it seems like a funny thing to have, but at the same time, I think it's worth fighting for because they're not cheap. It's not like somebody went out and spent $100 in this thing and now they can't use it. Like we're talking about a $15,000 to $20,000 vehicle. Like what happens now? Like some guy's still making payments on his truck that he bought through, some financing company. Now he can't drive it to work.
But the reality is that a lot of people don't even use them as daily drivers. They're just toys.
Sure.
So they don't even get driven every day.
For sake of argument, I was just using that as a point. But you're right. And
for my sake of argument, a lot of the people
that's the other say
this about us, right? They'd be like, "Well, why do you guys own 5 cars?" It's like, well, does it matter? I can only drive one at a time.
Right. And are they actually a problem otherwise? Like, they're not a problem. Like,
they're not running. I don't just leave them in my driveway running. Yours don't run, so it's not a problem.
Man, that burn is getting to a point where it's not going to make sense anymore. I can't wait. I'm getting there. It's part of the reason I'm coming home. I got to get that that head gasket and that head put back on that that Colt. So we're getting there. The joke will no longer have legs because the cars will all have heads
Okay. All right.
eventually. So, all right. Anything else going on?
No, that's really all I had.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Because I went to bed at 4 a.m. and was up before 8, and it's now 7 p.m., and I am ready for bed again. So I'm going to eat some dinner, and I'm going to go to bed and recover from this Radwood weekend.
All right. Go to bed. Go to bed, Brad.
Yep. Old man Brad going to bed at 7 p.m. So.
Well, it's 10 p.m. here, so you're going to bed at 10.
Perfect. I need a recovery night. So thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you catch us on Instagram at Auto Off Topic, on Facebook, Auto Off Topic Podcast. You can see me on Instagram at TSISS350. And Andrew, where can they find you?
I am Racing Anger on Instagram and Racing in Anger on Twitter. And yeah, as always, keep your cars analog and aim for the roses.